Welcome, Whovians and sci-fi fans of all different kinds, to the Hailing Frequencies podcast. This time looking at the Doctor Who special that has just dropped, and in our history of making whimsical names for it, this is Hoorays and Boo-Hoos. I am one of your hosts, Stu.
I'm your other host, Alastair. Stu, how's it going?
Really, really good. Thank you. And yeah, the 60th special has kicked off with this very special Star Beast episode. So, how excited are you to get the 60th special kicked off?
Uh, on one hand, super excited. Very excited to see David Tennant back as the Doctor. Very excited to see Russell T Davies back at the helm of the show as well. And always just excited to have more Doctor Who. We've mentioned in the past growing up, or maybe I should say, being just being around at the time where no Doctor Who was on the air. And if you were lucky enough to be born in, I don't know, probably about sort of 1999 or so, that's not going to have been a factor really for much of your life. But for those of us before then, I still get the feeling of yes, new Doctor Who. We're not back to no Doctor Who. So big enthusiasm for me on all those points, but a little bit of nerves as well. I was sort of like, please don't mess this up. Don't let it be bad. So, yeah, a little bit of trepidation. What about you? How are you feeling in anticipation of this?
Very, very similar to yourself. I mean, I'm probably more excited about Russell being back at the helm than I am about Tennant. If I'm, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like David Tennant as the Doctor. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, so I feel the last couple of iterations of Doctor Who have fallen by the wayside a bit. The writing kind of sucks. If I'm honest. So yeah, Russell being back feels right. It feels good. I'm happy for that. I do have my own trepidations, namely in the Disney Corporation. I kind of think, like the Cyberman, they come along and turn everything into a carbon copy of everything else. I'm hoping that doesn't happen so far. There's well, maybe bits, maybe not. Um, we'll have to see how it. Yeah, we'll have to see how it turns out eventually. But I think it's absolutely clear that these three specials, starting with this one, the Star Beast, are going to be just pure fan service.
And this seems like a great moment to warn our viewers of the spoilers that will be present in our chat about Star Beast today. So if you've not seen the Star Beast, you may want to pause here, go away and watch it and come back, because we will, in perhaps unsurprisingly, in our conversation about the Star Beast, talking about things that occur within that story. So spoiler alert, they will be occurring after this point.
Yes, yes, good call, good shout. Um, so before we go into no, let's give our hoorays and boohoos first, and then we can perhaps talk a little bit more generically about the show, because some of the things that I was thinking we might talk generically about might actually come up as hoorays or boohoos. Like, what do we think of the new TARDIS, for example, or the new sonic screwdriver, or yeah, whatever. Uh, we'll go into all that. First of all, what was a hooray for you? What's on your hooray list?
It's a really obvious one, but it's got to be done. Meep and Miriam Margwell's performances as the Meep, just wonderful. Loved the to use a wrestling phrase, the heel turn from Meep in the middle of the episode, the switch from a cute little Space Paddington to a terrifying space tyrant in the halfway point of the episode was really nicely done, and just a wonderful performance, and a very memorable Doctor Who alien, which is always nice to add them to the vast canon of memorable Doctor Who aliens that have come and gone in the past.
Do you know, it put me a lot in mind of a couple of things, but one of them, and our Trekkie viewers who watch our Lower Decks reviews will appreciate that when I when I say Meepsy.
Oopsie, yeah.
You got Moopsy, which is this white, cute creature that turns like nasty and horrible. And you've got a white, cute creature. But Meep and Moopsy. So Meepsy, there you go.
Great crossover potential.
Interchangeable.
Make it happen, Disney empowerment.
Hey, we've
I
got
know
Star Trek Livingston we can
Stu.
do crossovers in.
That's true. I know that we usually sort of run through our good or bad points about things we're discussing in one go, but I feel like it might be nice to go back and forwards a bit here. So, what was one of your hoorays from this episode? One of the things that landed on the good side of things for you?
So, I mean, yes, I agree with you that the Meep was a great character and a great villain. But for me, outstandingly above all else was the amount of emotion that Tennant brings to the role. Um, there's a real heartbreaking moment when he's there in the ship, trying to deactivate it, and he realizes the only way they can deactivate it is by reactivating Donna, as it were, or the Doctor Donna. It's just absolutely heartbreaking, and um, yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah,
we saw a bit of that level with Capaldi. We saw that level of performance and emotion from Capaldi. But yeah, with Tennant, it brought it all back. Who his Doctor is for me.
yes, yeah, very much agree that it was that moment and his what he went through as a character and around that was immediately transportive back to his original run on the show, and particularly the sort of the latter part of it. So, and yeah, just a great moment of drama in general, right, Stu? Yeah.
Very much, very much. The writing was just sort of chef's kiss. And yeah, that frustration, that angst. I mean, Tennant's just an amazing actor anyway. But yeah, he to me he utterly gets. I mean, he should do because it's in his family. Like he's married to Peter Davidson's daughter. And Peter Davison was his doctor growing up as well, like as Peter Davison was mine. um yeah, there's a whole thing. There's a whole thing
Yeah,
because
yeah,
his wife
absolutely.
was in Doctor Who, played the
Yep,
Doctor's
that's
daughter.
right. Daughter, yeah.
So the Doctor's married to the Doctor's daughter, who is the daughter of the Doctor.
And you thought the show was confusing. Yeah.
um yeah, that was for me the absolute outstanding element of it. Any more for your hoorays?
Yeah, shout out. Now, I have not read the comic that this story is a loose adaptation of, but it is indeed an adaptation of a Doctor Who comic, written by for me one of the best comic writers of all time, Pat Mills, who was an editor at one point for 2000 AD, probably the biggest. I mean, just a huge title in British comics. If you're not familiar with it, 2000 AD is still in print just now, and well worth checking out. And Mills is a great writer, and I think that whilst Russell T Davies, did write the script for this, and as far as I understand it, brought a lot of ideas that were not in the original comic. I doubt this episode would be what it is without that initial story by Pat Mills. So huge appreciation for me of his involvement, even in sort of what I presume is a slightly oblique way. I don't know if he would have had any input directly into the script as it was developed, but please, Doctor Who showrunners, consider going back to that well again, because I think there's a lot of great Doctor Who material that could come from Pat if he was given the chance. So yeah, thumbs up from me, and we'd love to see more contributions, whether they're adaptations or original scripts or ideas or whatnot in the future from him. And Dave Gibbons, I should mention as well, who's co-credited on that story.
Mm, yes. 2000 AD. I haven't read that since I was a kid, but I still remember it was the Splundig Thrig.
Yes, Splundig Verthrig. Yeah, I mean, just to make, I mean, it's a testament. If you know nothing about British comics, if you know nothing about comics in general, one thing you'll be aware of is that anything that's printed physically on actual paper that you read, whether that's your favorite magazines or newspapers or whatever, for something to still be in print and distributed to newsagents and available for print subscription in this day and age, it really has to have had something about it that's given it incredible staying power. And for 2000 AD to have survived the late 90s all the way through to just now without any stop in print production and to still be going gives you some idea of how special that title is. So yeah, happy memories for me as well, Stu, and a high recommendation to our viewers to check it out if they enjoyed this episode of Doctor Who.
Totally. And I mean, I know this isn't a 2000 AD stream, but it's what brought me, like me as a kid, Judge Dredd, Slain,
Yeah,
Strontium Dog, Nemesis the Warlock.
the Warlock. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, how many years, decades have they been trying to make a movie? Nemesis the
There's so
Warlock.
yeah, there is so much.
Yeah.
There's so much with Pat Mills's name attached to it that is rich. It's rich. It's excellent storytelling, and it's fantastic ideas, and they're great prime stories waiting for adaptation. I almost used the phrase intellectual property. That's why I waffled slightly there, because I don't want to reduce this amazing art to being intellectual properties. But yeah, some of the names you name checked there, Slain, in the age of Game of Thrones, Slain is just a prime for an adaptation. I think it would be amazing to see. Nemesis, very hard to adapt, but as CGI progresses, less and less so, and just a timeless tale of rebellion against authority in one of the most sort of just effortlessly cool. The effortlessly cool often applies to 2000 AD stories, but Nemesis is definitely one of those times. So yeah, fingers crossed for some more adaptations. I loved the Carl Urban Dread film when that was out, and yeah, let's hope more is on the way, whatever titles they work on from that. And as I say, I would love to see Pat get a chance to contribute more to Doctor Who, because I think it does great things for this story. So I believe that the meat and the story of the meat being pursued comes from that comic. So that there we go. That's something concrete that we loved from this episode. That was a Pat Mills idea. So bringing us back around to Doctor Who for those who have already gone. I thought this was about Doctor Who and turned us off already, Stu. So yeah.
Well, no, I think that's to talk about the sort of providence of this story. I think that's a really really good and important aspect to that. So, no, really
What
good.
else was working for you about this episode?
Donna Noble stepping straight back into it like she's never been away, like those 15 years. 15. I'm nearly having to hit the bleep button. 15 years.
Feeling old, yeah.
I mean, initially when we first saw Rose, and it's like, oh, it's a daughter. I'm thinking, oh, it must be an adopted daughter because far too old to be,
old enough.
Yeah, yeah. 15 years. I mean, that's it. That's the rest of this podcast is me just going, 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely with you on that. Yeah, scary stuff.
Donna straight back into it, not missing a single beat. Possibly even bringing a bit more warmth and humanity, and I think as a character, Parenthood has softened her somewhat, made her a bit more empathetic and that's all to the good with the character. So I don't mind admitting, when we first met Donna Noble in The Runaway Bride, I hated her character. I think Catherine Tate's a great actor. Please don't misunderstand me. Catherine Tate's great, but Donna Noble, and when they announced she was going to be the new companion, I was, oh God, no. And I was a little bit biased against her to start with, but by the end of that arc, I was fully on board. This Donna Noble, I think I like even more.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree, and I would extend that to the cast in general here in this episode. I actually think that we get treated to really good performances all around. I've already mentioned Miriam Margolyes, but the whole ensemble is really good here. I mean, I feel like we touched on David Tennant stepping back into the role, and I think it's comparable to what you're saying about Donna. It really just sort of feels like picking up where things left off with the appropriate amount of, some things have transpired in between, sort of added in so that it doesn't feel like you've missed anything in the middle or things are being forgotten. That all checks out and is good. But Rose, Donna's mum, Donna's husband, so there's just so many performances in this that are really fun to watch and just well done, and a pleasure to see such a great set of it's a great set of performances. Again, the performances are really good. I'll stop saying the same word over and over now. But yeah, that's definitely behind you on Donna just stepping back into it effortlessly and being a joy to watch.
Definitely lots and lots to like. But let's move on to our could be better moments, our boo-hoos. What's on your list for that?
I actually really think that there is not. I don't think there's much to boo-hoo over here. I think that overwhelmingly this is going to be a crowd pleaser. And so we often say this in when we come to our negatives about things, that we're more kind of maybe splitting hairs when it's as good as this, or looking at things that maybe could have been a bit better rather than things that were bad. And I think that there was a busyness at moments in the plot for this episode with the possessed unit soldiers, the aliens who are hunting the meep itself, the backstory for the meep. I mean, Doctor Who often can slip into this where it can become a little bit hard to pick the thread through the action of what the exact story is behind the backgrounds of everyone involved and what is necessarily transpiring beat for beat within the action. And I think that this episode's had a bit of that, but Doctor Who often pulls that off very well. And, I don't think that anyone will, if people are sitting there at the end of this going, hold on a second, what possessed the unit soldiers, I don't think they're going to be thinking it was a bad episode as a result of it. So I have to say it's a very mild sort of point of note for me on my first sort of negative thoughts about it. But what about you, Stu? Anything more obvious and sort of more problematic in a larger sense?
I, I'd avoid personally. I'd avoid the word problematic. I think you've hit the nail on the head. We are nitpicking. Um, but I also think a production, with this level of production values, if you can nitpick, I think it's worth mentioning. And I think you're absolutely right. How did the unit soldiers get this psychedelic sort of brainwashing thing? How did that work? How did it suddenly disappear? What led to those? It feels like there's like deleted scenes that would explain this somewhere on the cutting room floor, perhaps. And maybe there is. Maybe the DVD will, fill those parts in. But aside from that, I actually had a list of 4 nitpicky things.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
My overall one, my biggest boo-hoo was the coffee throw. For a number of reasons. The biggest one, it was far too predictable. The moment she said, oh, yeah, because, throwing coffee over a computer, because that's how I lost my last job, you knew she was going to throw the coffee over the console. My hope at that, in that split second, was she's going to throw the coffee on the console and nothing's going to happen because it's a bloody spaceship and, a little bit of liquid, surely you'd shield against, such a, especially when you've got a coffee machine on the actual console itself. That was my.
But instead, it catches fire.
It catches fire, and I mean, we know how flammable coffee is, right? So there was the predictability of it. There was the execution of it as well. She's talking and she's got the coffee in her and does this. There's no reason. Oh, I think they could have come up with some other way of, even as he's walking around the console, he's like, oh, what does that do? That would have been a great way to send them, off in some unexpected direction. Was he presses the wrong button? I mean, that has been
I'm with you on this, Stu. It just is clunky, isn't it? I think it's it's not as we're saying, it's not the worst thing ever. We can definitely live with the coffee spill being the starting point for the next adventure, but it is clunky, let's be honest. So yeah,
I do feel like I'm ranting.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll move on. The others. So here's where you and I disagree a little bit. The Meep storyline itself, I was I love the Meep storyline. Um, like yourself, I haven't actually read this particular graphic novel story, but pulling a story from the graphic novel, and I know Russell T Davies talked about this, he loves the story so much and that's why he wanted to use it. But that's giving the audience a story. I mean, certainly for those people who already knew the story, they know pretty much what's going to, all right, maybe not the details, but they know pretty much what's going to happen. That sudden, I think you called it wrestling turn, heel toe or heel
The heel
turn,
turn, yeah, yeah.
heel turn. Um, they would have seen that coming. And that, I don't know. That, I mean, that really is a nitpicky thing, I suppose. But
Yeah, no, but I think to say, do we need in Doctor Who, do we need stories that have been told in any medium retold again in the main body of the show? Is an important question to be asking. Big Finish have produced a lot. If we're saying, do we, is it maybe not the most exciting for people who have already read that comic to see it reproduced for this story? Then it opens up a bit of discussion about the vast amounts of sort of extended. I don't even know what to call it. It's not quite canon, but it's around the edges of it from comics and Big Finish, and it would be memory beta in Star Trek terms, right, rather than memory alpha. But I think that I haven't, I've not read it either, so I have no idea how people who did read it felt about seeing something that they sort of knew at least a bit of the story of before watching. But I absolutely fair to raise the point of, is that where we want, Doctor Who to be picking story points from?
I think get those people involved 100% because they're amazing creative people who understand the universe in which it's set, or the Whoniverse, if you will. Um, but yeah, existing story. So to draw the Star Trek parallel, um, in Star Trek you've got alpha canon and beta canon, and beta canon is kind of its own thing. So when you look at the books, the graphic novels, all the surrounding stories, it is considered a completely separate thing. With Doctor Who and certainly with Star Wars as well, every supporting piece. So, for example, you mentioned Big Finish. One of the reasons why they focus on stories of previous Doctors is because Doctors don't come back. So you can expand on the existing universe without treading on the toes of the current or future. It's a really good way of doing it. It's a bit like, I suppose, with Star Trek, if they started producing more original series era novels, that kind of thing. And I think I'm fairly sure that Doctor is similar to Star Wars in that sense, in that there's a lot of consultation done, there's a lot of discussions that happen before stuff is released. Star Trek is just like, there you go ahead, and Simon and Schuster can just release any old books on as much as they like, kind of thing. So yeah, are we now saying as a result of this that, like the Meep story in the graphic novel, is that now beta canon? Is beta canon now a thing in Doctor Who? Or does it tie up with the story of the Meep? Do the two kind of gel together in some way? Certainly the Doctor didn't recognize the Meep, so yeah. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
it's a thought. It could get, that's quite a rabbit hole to go down. So I'm going to move on. Unless you have
Good, no,
a
good, good.
another boohoo.
I could continue with you down that rabbit hole, but I'm going to pass back to you. I have one more boohoo, but I think it would be a good one to end on potentially. So I will can let you continue with your list here.
Okay. They're two very quick ones. The sonic screwdriver shields. Where the hell does that come from? How many times could that have been used in the past and just didn't exist? Because it's a screwdriver, it's not a magic wand.
Yes, I had a very similar thought to you. Screwdriver continues to be the problematic plot device that it has been plaguing doctors as for many years, at least as far back as Tom Baker, in terms of doctors beginning to say, look, this is a bit silly, maybe it shouldn't solve everything as a plot device. And I think very problematically here is that we can say that the Doctor has innovated with the screwdriver, and the reason we have never seen it used to create shields before is because it is something that he's only just figured out how to do. But the problem is going forward, as it is whenever you add things to canon, and particularly something that is as long running as Doctor Who. The next time we see a situation where the Doctor could get out of it by creating a shield with a sonic screwdriver and he doesn't do it, we will be left asking why, and the contrivance to explain why that doesn't happen adds another layer to the problem of this. So totally with you on that, Stu. Yep, I don't think the sonic screwdriver needs to be able to do anything more at this point. And I think you're going to have to invest a lot into it to win us over if you want to push it. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, my other nitpicky area, my final boohoo, is the new TARDIS.
Not a fan?
I'm sure it will grow on me. Previous ones that I haven't liked have grown on me, but I feel this is really missing something. So we got like the original TARDIS console room behind me, which was clean and spacey and scientific and what have you. And as we've gone on through the years and the TARDIS has evolved, it's gotten more organic and more lived in. It's it's got more character. This feels like a step backwards to me in terms of design.
Interesting. I quite liked it in that I felt like it was the right TARDIS at for the time. I felt like I totally actually agree with you that I think it does draw a lot on old designs, and that does represent in some ways a stylistic step back or look back or whatever at that style. I liked that they'd kept a lot of the curved lines that you had in more modern TARDISes that really started with Eccleston's, where you have these ramp walkways and stuff that curve around the console, and that kind of spherical feel to the room is still there as well. And it felt like this sort of meeting of original or classic run Doctor Who and New Who TARDISes into something that, I mean, I think I actually kind of agree with you that it's not the most innovative or exciting, but it's quite a nice summation almost of what has occurred in Doctor Who up to this point with TARDIS designs. And I feel like for what they will be hoping will be a big influx of new fans coming to the show with Disney picking it up. I don't think it's the worst first thing to see for a fan who's never watched Doctor Who, in terms of like, this is what a TARDIS is on the inside kind of thing. So I guess I'm somewhat in agreement in that I see what you mean about it being maybe not the most inspired and a bit sort of backwards looking, but I guess maybe I see the potential that this is a moment for that kind of design to reach a new audience and represent for them what is very familiar and old news to us in a way that will actually be quite exciting and eye catching and representative of the history of the show for newcomers too.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's incredibly representative of Disney in that, yes, it's extremely well designed, but it's far too clean and it lacks character.
And
Well,
does that bring us to the end of your boohoo list, Stu?
it does with one more mention about the TARDIS.
Oh, sorry, go for it. Yes, yeah, please.
This is on the exterior. Why has the sign changed to black with white writing?
Oh, well, I did not catch that on my
Mm.
watch of this episode.
Mm.
That is an
I always look
interesting
to see
one.
how the external characteristics of the TARDIS change, as well as the internal. Uh, to me,
Yeah,
that's quite a telling aspect of
good
it.
catch. Any thoughts on why that's happened, Stu?
Just to make it different, just to it feels like they're running out of ways to make it different from
Change
how
for
it's been used
change's
to be.
sake.
There is only so much you can do with a blue box, after all. But historically, they've been very innovative, and that in the 50th. Oh God, that was 10 years ago. Oh my God, the 50th special. When you see the 11th, sorry, the 10th, 11th. No, hang on. You see the War Doctor's TARDIS next to Tennant's and Smith's, and you can see the difference between all three. There's even a moment when John Hurt goes, "Oh, which one's mine?" I mean, it's bloody obvious, you know, the one with the scorch marks. Um, but the exterior of the TARDIS has kind of always reflected um, the type of Doctor we're getting. So I don't know.
What
Do
do
you
you think?
think
Time for the chameleon circuit to make a comeback?
well, it's that's the thing. It's adapted over time. So, do you think the interior of the TARDIS is what we're seeing for Nkuti's Doctor?
That's a very good question. I think I would hope so. I feel like it might be a little bit much to have. I can absolutely see them doing it, but I think it might be a little bit much to have one TARDIS for this and then one TARDIS for the start of Nkuti's run. Um, I think I maybe hope that they don't switch so rapidly from one TARDIS to another. Uh, Good question,
I
though,
hope
Stu.
they do.
I can tell.
Well, I don't. I don't
Well, I think
dislike
yeah.
it. I was going to say,
I
it
think
does have retrofit.
the good news for you is that I can absolutely see that happening, whether I like the idea of it or not. So we'll watch this space and see if it comes to pass that we get one TARDIS that only exists for 3 episodes or not.
Yeah, yeah. So your final boohoo.
My final boohoo, which is more of a meta comment, is that as fun as it is to see Tennant and Tate back on screen together, and to have um, a really amazing throwback to that era in terms of evoking it whilst giving it a fresh spin and definitely having it be exciting and feel new in its own way as well is do we maybe wish that we didn't have to go back to that well to um, revive interest, I guess, in the show. I mean, there are plenty of us as avid fans who have never lost interest or who would be interested at any new change coming along to the show to shake it up. But I feel like this was a very a very specific set of decisions to return to the past in this way. And it's an anniversary year as well, so there's a bit more justification for it. But I feel like even if it wasn't an anniversary year, this would have still been on the cards as something to do at this juncture in Doctor Who history. And there's just part of me that wishes that maybe hadn't been necessary. I would have, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Tennant and Tate return, but for it to feel like it was being seen as such a necessity or such a keystone of rejuvenating the series. We haven't seen that up until now, right? I guess is maybe a point I would make. Christopher Eccleston didn't come back at the start of Peter Capaldi's run to rejuvenate interest. Matt Smith didn't come back at the start of Jodie Whittaker's run to do a turn. And I guess it says something that's what's happening here, and I'm not sure that it makes me super happy, even though I love the episode and probably the episodes coming up as well that we're getting from it. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit outside the box of talking about the episode. Really, it's more about talking about what's happening with the show and the run of it as it continues on over the years. But that's my final sort of boohoo thought for this one.
I think that's really valid observations. I'm going to counter slightly on it.
Go for it.
Because see, I think there are a lot of moving pieces that have come together synergistically. There's a word you don't hear very often. Obviously, you've got the 60th anniversary. They need to do something different, something bold, something with a huge amount of fan service. And Tennant is by far and away, if not the most popular Doctor, he's certainly up there. So there's a huge amount of fan service in bringing him back, and bringing him back in a way that they've not done before. Is important as well, because he's 15 years older. So there's that. The whole Donna Noble story, it was always a heartbreaking story, and I think a lot of fans felt it was very difficult to process that her story felt unfinished because of the way it was left. That, well, she just forgot that she had all these adventures and that's it. And there's always this part of her that's going to miss out on that. And, that's not a good place to leave her story, ultimately, anyway. So coming back, revisiting, finishing off her story, I think it is a good thing to do. And who else would you get to finish off her story but Tennant? Who else could? Because it was his Doctor that put her in that position in the first place. So there's that. There's the fact that Russell is back at the helm. And of course, he left with Tennant. So there's that. I think they lost a lot of fans over the Moffat years. A lot of fans. I liked this is gonna right. I'm gonna put a controversial thing out here. I counted up quite a number of things that I think would basically like playing bigot bingo. Oh, there's a trans character. Oh, they've described themselves as non-binary. Oh, they've talked about preferred pronouns. Oh, we've got a mixed race. You can go on. A wheelchair user. Oh, there's a lot of representation that's going on. So I think, yes, we lost a number of bigots from the fandom when Jodie Whittaker came in as the Doctor, and I think, good, we don't want bigots in the fandom. That's personally how I feel. So I think that Russell kind of almost undoing the Moffat years, but having such heavy representation like that kind of still safeguards against the bigots, but brings all the other fans back in.
I think to pick up on
maybe.
Well, to pick up on, I thought you were, the there's an interesting thing about the decline in viewership, right, over the years of the reboot. And the interesting thing is that it's somewhat mirrored by the original run as well. And the explanation that I've heard that's quite compelling for this is that you have a generation that grows up with Doctor Who and then hits adulthood. And at some point, both iterations of the show stopped growing with that audience. So in Modern Who, you have this arc where you get to Capaldi's quite dark Doctor with a kind of horror, it's a quite horror sort of themed first season for him, and you feel like sort of Doctor Who is matured with that audience who came in with Eccleston and Tennant, and he's a natural kind of culmination of the show trying to mature and evolve along with that audience, and so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounds faintly ridiculous to say it because this episode has been, as far as I can see, terrifically well received, and I think will be a very big success. And I'd be very surprised if the other two don't follow that up. And I would even go as far as to say that on the strength of this, I'd be surprised if the first season that we get from Russell T isn't a success by the standards that most people are going to be looking to quantify it by. I'm still skeptical as to whether in the long term, returning to your first showrunner to rejuvenate your show at this point, whether I'll be interested to see how it gets seen 10, 20 years from now and how this era of Doctor Who is looked back on with hindsight. Because there's part of me just wishes we had a fresh showrunner in who was coming from outside of the what seems to be sort of a group of people affiliated with Doctor Who over its current iteration since the Eccleston reboot. Someone coming in from outside of that circle and just giving it a completely fresh perspective. That is wonderful as what we're getting here is that there's maybe that in an alternate universe, as Doctor Who is fond of, there might be an even bigger kind of chance to do something exciting with the show that is missed out on by going back. But that is wild speculation on my part. So maybe I should just count my lucky stars that I thoroughly enjoyed the Star Beast, and I'm looking forward to the next two episodes in these specials already. So yeah.
I can definitely see what you're saying there. For me, I think one of the things that Russell does so very well, he's so adaptable, and when you look at the different things that he's been showrunner on and the different vibe and feel that you get from it. I mean, even within the Doctor Who universe, you look at Torchwood. Huge fan of Torchwood. I'm embarrassed to admit it took until the second season of Torchwood for me to realise that Torchwood was an anagram of Doctor Who. But anyway, but it was so different. It was all right, set in the same universe, but so different, so fundamentally different. And of course, we're talking. We've saying this a few times. It's been 15 years. But of course, Russell himself has changed and adapted and evolved over those 15 years. So I perhaps don't have I recognize your concerns, and I hear them, and I can 100% see why they are there. But for those reasons, I perhaps don't have the same concerns. I think, he just understands the nature of the franchise so well.
Absolutely, and equally as much, I can absolutely see where you're coming from, and would be the first to admit that I possibly would have the biggest regrets if I glimpsed in a universe where he didn't come back and everything went horribly wrong. So I'm not saying that I have the answer on that, but rather just sharing something that has crossed my mind in terms of where we find ourselves with Doctor Who at the moment. So yeah, anything more to add on Star Beast, Stu?
Um, well, only so I've got to throw in this Polish saying, "You can never cross the same river twice." Um, feels relevant. Um, speaking of lines, let's do our favorite lines.
Oh yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, I actually almost let mine slip earlier on. My favorite line for this was when Donna quips. What's the exact line again? No way we could sell this space Paddington for £1 million or something when they're in the house of the meet near the start. But yeah, it got a laugh out loud moment for me. Really enjoyed that one from this. What about you, Stu? Favorite line?
Mine is also a Donna line, um, but not a humorous one. Um, it's when she again reactivates or becomes again the Doctor Donna. And she asks the doctor how long she's got to live, and he says 55 seconds. And there's just this real heartfelt best 55 seconds of my life. I welled up. I don't mind admitting
Yeah,
I did well up.
absolutely.
Um, she then went on with that line and it kind of got away, but that's another thing. But that encapsulated that part of that line. Best
Definitely.
55 seconds of my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Tugging on the heartstrings. Yeah.
It really did.
Good choice.
Really did. Um, any predictions or things to look forward to about the next two episodes?
Um, I think the obvious one has got to be Patrick Harris's Toy Maker, right? You're remiss of us not to mention that coming up. Um, yeah, look, I mean, just looks like it's going to be a real treat. Lovely to see uh, uh, for all I've just moaned about going back to the well. Very cool to see I guess, perhaps getting off the hook on the fact that it's quite a deep cut of a villain from series of yesteryear coming back to menace the Doctor again. So, definitely excited for that. What about yourself?
I agree. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris is always an absolute delight to watch. And see, I got really excited when he was in the new Matrix movie. Um, yeah, although I've never watched How I Met Your Mother ever, never seen a single episode.
Neither have I. I think I've seen a few minutes of one episode and that's it. So.
That was enough. Okay. But yeah, he's absolutely amazing. And from the trailers and little bits that we've seen, looks like he is just throwing himself into that role. The Celestial Toy Maker. Yeah, 1966 was the last time we saw that character. But
I
was it?
can forgive recurring that character after a 60-year
Yeah.
absence. I'll let that go.
Do you think that's who the Meep meant by the boss?
Absolutely could be. I can see that being the case. But maybe we're building up to something beyond the specials episodes that's going to run into the first Nkuti season. So I can see potential for either, hedging my bets on that one.
Hmm. Could be, could be. It's definitely going to be a fantastic combination, that episode. I've no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. I think we know that um, our Doctor Who showrunners like to have their kind of longer arcs these days that will span entire Doctors or entire times as showrunners as kind of through lines. So it's really hard to guess when these little seeds start appearing of things for the future as to when they will come to fruition. But absolutely, it could be as soon as the toy makers return, but maybe we're looking at something that will be years down the line. Who knows?
Maybe. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it. Our viewers undoubtedly will be looking forward to our next hoorays and boo-hoos, but they've got a bit of a wait, haven't they?
He will return, but not until sometime between Christmas and New Year's. So you will have seen all of the specials by the time that we are back talking about them again. And I think that might actually be quite an interesting perspective to approach the next two from Stu. So yeah, our recap will cover both of them, and we will have the benefit of seeing both of them as well to chat over the anniversary specials as a whole at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. In the meantime, viewers, have a very happy holidays. Remember, don't blink and reverse the polarity of the neutron flow.